Oh yeah, look at that.
Indianapolis. The frick am I doing here?
Yeah, we don't like that. Indianapolis, I don't know about that. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Juice. My name is Sayre Bedinger, and I am ecstatic to be here hosting with my good friend Brandon Keckler. And I want to kind of set some stuff up here for you. I'm a lifelong Denver Broncos fan. When I say lifelong, I mean from the moment that I could really understand what rooting for a sports team meant. I've been rooting for the Denver Broncos, and a lot of that passion comes through in my writing. Many of you maybe have read my stuff throughout the years. Bleacher Report, predominantly Orange, Mile High Report, wherever you are, whoever you are, and however you're affiliated to this show, to the Denver Broncos. I just want to give a Mile High salute to you all and just welcome you to the inaugural podcast. And like I said, I'm joined by a very special Denver Broncos fan. Many of you may not have met him. It's his birthday today. First of all, his birthday, and it couldn't be a more epic time for a birthday. Brandon Keckler's here, and I can't think of anybody better to start off this podcast with. Brandon, welcome.
Thank you. And I will say, last year's birthday was on the first round instead of the second
Oh,
and
okay.
third. And
Yeah.
we got a bunch of lobster and filet mignon for my dirty 30 on opening round one. So it does get a little bit better
Okay.
than this, but this is a close second.
That's a hard one to top. I mean, you're talking filet mignon, the draft, birthday. I mean, there's typically a Marvel movie coming out every year at this time, which, by the way, you're the biggest movie TV fanatic I've ever met in my entire life, specifically Marvel, Star Wars, and you just saw the new Avengers
Infinity.
film. I'm
Mm-hmm.
jealous of that because I have not seen it yet. I will see it, but
Mm-hmm.
very exciting.
Yeah. Oh, it was incredible. And it's so hard because it's like you're like saying all this stuff on Twitter where it's you can't say anything specific about the movie. You can't spoil it at all. So it's like how do you like articulate like what you felt without spoiling it and you just want to really just gush about like everything amazing that happened and
Hmm.
you got to like, give your buddies at least a week to catch up. So it's tough. I'm like bursting at the seams that like I need to talk about it right now, but we could talk Broncos in the meantime.
We'll definitely get to more Avengers down the line because I think that's part of what we want this show to be. Is not just we're not just going to give the typical, hey, here's what's happening in Bronco Land, and this is what we think about it. Because you know what, opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one, and it doesn't really matter what we think, except for the fact that I feel like you and I, Brandon, specifically, we've always put an optimistic spin on things because if you're a fan of the Denver Broncos, why not be optimistic? Why not believe that they're going to go 19-0 and win the Super Bowl every year? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you know what? You don't have to necessarily believe, every single week they're going to go out, okay, there's not going to be any adversity. There's not going to be any slip ups. Nothing bad is ever going to happen to my team. But you know what? I'm going to believe that every single week going into a game, the Broncos can win that game. I'll find ways to figure out how they can match up well with somebody and go on the road in New England and win the game, even if they're not going to do it. I feel like you and I have a similar wavelength for
Yeah,
that.
tapped into that similar frequency. That's where we became friends off the bat in that same place. And it's not you don't want to have rose colored glasses about everything and see it through this like Broncos are the greatest. Every decision is going to be great. There's no failure. There's no mistakes. Where you spin everything into a positive. So we don't want to do that. But at the same time, you and I both do relate in the fact that we lean toward trying to find what's optimistic about something, trying to find a silver lining in most stuff. So we're not just sitting here and griping and complaining about all the things that we're mad about as far as what's going on with the Broncos, but hopeful that things are going to go in a positive direction and finding those things to talk about. And that's pop culture as well, like you were saying, in some of the ways that we get excited about things. We don't go into movies looking to find the flaws. We go into it
Mhm.
looking for things to enjoy, you know?
Exactly. And I think that that's a big thing for Denver Broncos fans that, that's something that the Tebow years really taught me is that, you know what, if you believe for the best and hope for the best and accept whatever happens, that sometimes things can work out in your favor as a fan. I mean, you might be sitting there down 13-0 or 10-0 to the Chicago Bears in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left, and Tim Tebow is going to bring you back into the game and win the game. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. That's the great thing about football, first of all, is
Team's running back may step out of bounds when he should have gone down, like
I mean,
the Bears game, and give us a chance. There's factors outside of it that are outside of our control that may play in our favor.
exactly. You never know.
On the Bears.
What's that? Marion Barber. Yeah, that was him.
Yep. That was a great day. That was a great day.
I
still remember where I was watching all of those games.
Oh, 100%. And I think most Broncos fans do because that was the best. That was the most, I can't say the best. That was the most entertaining season I can remember as a Denver Broncos fan.
Yeah, and that's what it's there's different ways. Saying best is like this blanket term of like you got to single it down to like the best of all these factors, but there's something about it being, like you said, the funnest, the most storybook almost, as far as like an underrated underdog protagonist conquering all the things that everyone said that they couldn't do. It was the most storybook season for sure. And as a storyteller, it was my favorite Broncos season. I enjoyed that more.
Exactly. And that's something that I want people to know about who you are and who, I don't know, there's just a great connection here because you are so invested. You're a writer, a screenwriter. You're writing a book. There's so many different areas of pop culture and entertainment that you're tapped into and you're intimately involved with that makes your fandom for the Broncos, to me, so unique. And that's why I thought there's no better way for this podcast to go than to bring the analytical fans perspective to the storybook big picture perspective. And so tell us a little bit about how your fandom for the Broncos got started and how you kind of see them through that lens as a storyteller.
Yeah. So unlike you, I didn't come out the womb as a Bronco fan. I was definitely raised in a Niner household. And football to me as a kid was sitting on your dad's lap and then getting vaulted face first into the carpet as my dad screaming, "Go, go, go!" or break his effing legs if Emmitt Smith was running with the ball. So that was my childhood. To me was growing up with that kind of football passion. So then when I was 10 years old in the Broncos' first Super Bowl, we had money on the quarters ending in a certain way. And if the Broncos didn't score at the end of the first half, then we were going to go on this big, huge skiing trip. And I was the only one that was sitting there going, "Go Elway, go Elway." And my whole family was pissed. They're just Elway was driving and they were just wanting him to get stopped. And I was like, "Go Elway, go Elway." And like, "You're not going on a skiing trip. You don't get to go with us." Whatever, go Elway.
You're out.
Yeah, and so that was like, and then the whole rest of the game, how they did score on the drive, and everything else that happened in that game, it changed my life, and I made that decision in that game that I was like, I'm a Bronco fan. I'm a Bronco fan for life, and I wrote out. I'm a big quarterback person. You know, we wrote out some tough quarterback patches, and I've never wavered. But Broncos are my team, and I do love the Niners. They're my number 2. But Broncos all day, even against the Niners for sure. So that was, and to me, I left football for a bit. About the time I graduated high school was Plummer Cutler transition, and I got really back into it and started loving football. And ever since the Jay Cutler times, I truly believe, even from an objective place, that the Broncos have had the best story since then. As far as, it doesn't need to be they have the most championships. That's kind of more of a simplistic way of looking at it. But when you talk about all of the different ups and downs and all the stuff that's happened with our coaches And the fact that we have had a Super Bowl and 2 Super Bowl appearances in that time, but just all the stuff with the quarterbacks, whether it was Cutler and McDaniels or the whole Tebow thing was just unlike anything we've ever experienced. And then Manning coming right after that. It's just been this really cool journey that I feel like if I was following an NFL team just based on the storylines, I picked the right team just based on that alone. So yeah, that's where I'm passionate about the stories in football. I'm passionate about, I've tracked the players and thankfully I think fantasy got me into the players beyond my team's players. So just following and tracking all those storylines over the years, that's what gets me energized about football and passionate about football is like I'm looking at it like a story. I'm looking at it like this, this is like episode 1 or episode 10 of season 2. And there's this huge story arc that's going on that like started before I came into the picture and will go long after. And you've said that before to where you appreciate kind of more of that holistic perspective that I have on seeing the big picture. And where sometimes as an analyst, you're just gauging all these facts. And I'm coming into it like I'm trying to put like archetypes on all these characters and like
Yeah.
into these like storytelling formulas. And it's like villains and heroes. And it's just so not the way that most people look at it. So I think that's where this is a cool kind of combination where we're similar in how we look at things. We're similar in our passions and, that frequency we were talking about before, but then we're kind of looking at it from different ways. I'm looking at it from a storybook and you're analyzing all the facts. And I think together you end up getting a dynamic perspective on what's going on with the Broncos.
I agree with that. And I think that one way that we're very similar is, and we talked about this before, as a matter of fact, let's just be open for a second. Brandon and I already recorded a 2-hour episode of this show that went to crap because the audio didn't work. So one thing that we talked about a little bit at length. No, go ahead.
But it wasn't crap. It was an awesome podcast. And you'll never hear it. You'll never know. It only exists within our lives. But yeah, it was a great episode. But yeah, it didn't take.
It was a great conversation, and you and I relate on so many things because the way that we play Madden. Okay, my friends hated me as a kid because every time they're like, "Hey, let's play Madden," I would jump on and I would go straight to franchise mode and I would pull up my franchise, that was going on, and I'd be like, "Oh, it's like week 5. I haven't simulated yet, so let's go in and just play a quick game with my franchise team, and you just play whoever I'm playing against," and they would just get housed. I mean, they would get destroyed, and the reason for that is because I never really played Madden. I built the roster over and over again. And then when it got too far into the future, I would just be like, all right, let's start over again because I'm running out of draft classes.
Right. Right.
But you're the same way.
A little crazier.
You've taken it to the next level, which I really appreciate because I didn't even know this feature of Madden existed where you could create coaches, control this many teams, do all these different types of things. Give us a little insight into your Madden madness.
I'm feeling some sneezes coming on. Sayre didn't know that you can jump in at any point in time during your Madden franchise as other coaches, other players, other owners that are currently active, or create your own at any point in time. So for those that don't know, you can control up to 32 different entities at any given time, one for each team. So you can be a Bronco player, a coach, or an owner, and you could be a player on the Broncos, a coach on the Niners, owner on the Cowboys. You can, and it's active, choosing the ones that are in the league, or custom. So it's really cool. I end up creating this narrative as a storyteller to where I have a character that I always start my Madden franchises off, and it's Coach Eric Maddox. He was a college prodigy coach. And what happens is he always takes over a team. So last Madden, I actually didn't do the Broncos. So I returned to the Broncos this year and started as the Broncos. And what I do is I'll play a few seasons, and then I like create a couple more characters. They were the OC and the DC of the Broncos, and then they branch out and they start their own teams. So then what I end up doing is I have this like almost like the Belichick tree, that like turns into all these places. And then I have I don't know if you know this, Belichick's the only coach that's not in Madden.
Really?
He's not part of the Coaches Association, I think is the deal. So he's a created character called Chad Masters.
That is very, very interesting.
So in my alternate universe, I just create Josh McDaniels and I make him the coach of the Patriots, and I let that. So anyway, so I've got this whole thing going on now, and last year I had an idea because you do play deep into Madden. You can play up to 30 years into the future, and you start to lose all the regular players. You know, they all start to retire, and pretty soon you're just left with all the random generated players, which for me creatively, it's easy for me to kind of give them a personality, but for a lot of other fans, it's tougher to do that. So what I've gone and done is I went and looked up. It almost sounds creepy when I start talking about this, but I went and looked up all the children of all the NFL players, all of the NFL progenies, and I found out when they were born and then when they would be drafted.
Amazing.
And what I do is I got this huge list in my Google Docs called Descendants, and I just go in when it's that particular off season, and I put in like Jack Brady right now is the quarterback of the Broncos in the 2030.
Wow.
We've got Dion's got two sons. One of them's a quarterback and one of them's a corner. Mike Allstott's son, Griffin Allstott, is one of the best running backs in the league. You've got Antonio Brown Jr. and Larry Fitzgerald's son, I forget what his name is, on the same team, getting thrown to his son. So it's wild, man, in the future of my alternate universe. But I let this whole thing play out, and like you, Sayre, I don't like the games are fun. Like I still play a few games a year, and then all the playoff games. But mostly, I'm in the off season building these teams, and I'm scouting the players, and I got these whole lists in my docs that are like all the team needs, and then I go through and I fill it through free agency and the draft, and the team building aspect of it is so much fun. So that's where this is definitely one of those times where not only do we relate in Madden, but we're also geeking out at the draft harder than maybe some people because we love the team building aspect of football.
That definitely has fueled my passion for the draft over the years. I remember as a 10-year-old kid, my parents would like basically any public function that we were at, my parents would be like, hey, watch this. They'd ask me, hey, Sayre, who was the 6th overall pick in the 1999 NFL draft? And I would just be like, boom, instantly. I would know who it was. And they'd be like, what the heck? Who is this kid? Or they'd be like, who was the 20-something pick in the 2001 NFL draft? And I would just know it instantly because I sat there and I would memorize the back of my trading cards that I got as a kid. And obviously I collected the rookie cards because who cares about the veterans when you could get the rare, valuable rookie card collection? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I still have like 3 Michael Vick rookie cards, which are still my prized possession because back in 2001, like that was the one card no one had was the Michael Vick rookie card. And so I found a bunch of those bad boys.
That's the Charizard of rookie cards.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And those two things were popular at the same time. The Michael Vick rookie card and the Charizard Pokemon card. I feel like, see, now we've just connected on yet another thing, Brandon. This is it.
Hey,
this
and I will say that's fascinating. I didn't know that about you. That whole thing about how you were like a sideshow, like that your parents like wheeled you out and like, hey, ask me a question. That's awesome. I did not know that at all. I used to that the only way I can resonate with that was I would teach my little brother like popular music songs. He was like a little kid. And we'd go to like the high school football games, and I'd be like, y'all gonna make me lose my mind. And he'd be like, up in here. So that's the closest way I could do it, but I was the jerk that was hauling out to show him off. So
that's amazing. I mean, you never know what it's going to be that just entertains people in a public setting, and you bust out what's consistent. You know, this consistently works, so we're going to use it. You know what I'm saying? So, but you're right. I mean, this is the time of year. This is the time of the year that I get excited for because I'm not a huge fan of the middle of the regular season grind. I mean, it is what it is. You're gearing up for a game every single week, but you're not necessarily at a point that's like, okay, this is an accumulation of all these different things that are happening right now, and all 32 teams are involved in this one event where they're jockeying for position, and the college teams and the best players in the country are involved here, and there's jobs on the line. There's, the Super Bowl is on the line during the draft. And I love that drama element of it. And I have since I was a kid. And it's just, it's grown into this thing where now I get to share it with thousands of people on Twitter, hundreds of different Bronco fans every single day, just conversing over, what are the Broncos going to do next? And I have to say, I came away from day one of the NFL draft extremely impressed with John Elway and his crew in the Broncos front office strategy. And we didn't even lead off with this, but the Broncos drafted Bradley Chubb, the defensive end from North Carolina State, a player that John Elway said came up 0 times in their mock draft scenarios as a staff, which I find hard to believe personally, because there's got to be one scenario that they thought of. But Bradley Chubb, the newest Denver Bronco.
Mm-hmm.
I love the pick, personally. I don't know how you feel about it, but I love it.
Well, I absolutely love it. And I know we were kind of texting back and forth while all this was going on yesterday. And it was like a little bit of a roller coaster leading up to 5. I think more so than I expected, because I think a lot of the people that I wanted, I would say the 2 that I wanted the most were grab 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you're just like, okay, well, let's not screw this up. If we're not going to get somebody that we really need, really want, we just need to trade back and fleece somebody. And and then it was looking like we were going to get Allen for a minute, which I know you and I both weren't too hot on. And then as soon as they grabbed Ward, it was like, oh, wait. Oh, my gosh. Oh, gosh, we can get Chubb.
Yeah.
And, like, I hadn't really entertained that too much. Like, I would say, like, I've thought about it, and I've read some of your guys' mock drafts and stuff like that, to where the idea of combining him with Miller, obviously going back to the Miller Doomerville and then the Miller Ware, Vaughn's always been at his best when there's a Batman or Robin thing going on. So, it's amazing, but I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't spent too much time trying on the possibility of that. And so as soon as it happened, it was very satisfying, for one, which is good. And then 2, then I started to dream about it and was just like, oh my gosh, Ray, Garrett, Miller, Walker.
Too many names.
Fire all the missiles, man. Like, just shoot them all. Like I cannot. Like, we may not yet have the best front 7. I think we're like a super good inside linebacker away from having the best front 7. But holy crap, if you're a quarterback, are you going to be terrified of the potential that the Broncos are going to have to attack you? And I think that's something that we need to get back to where our defense is in control, where those offenses are intimidated by the fact that we're going to go out there and we're going to be attacking them more than they're attacking us.
Right.
So, Chubb, good pick.
Yeah, I think so too. And I loved because of the craziness of what I do during the draft, I didn't even get to actually watch the NFL Network panel reaction to the Broncos pick. And I watched last night at probably 1 a.m. and I'm sitting there, and Mike Mayock and David Shaw, the head coach of Stanford, are basically like, I can't believe that the Denver Broncos have this opportunity. There's no doubt about it who they're going to pick here, because you have the opportunity to get the best defensive player in the draft and add him to a top 5 defense. I mean, the Broncos were terrible last year, and they still had a top 5 defense. And like you said, the Miller and Doomerville year, 2012, that, to a lot of Denver Broncos fans, that was the year that got away, not 2013. Just the simple fact that they had Miller and Doomerville that year, I think that was a huge missed opportunity, and we won't even speak of that stupid Baltimore game.
Oh yeah.
So we're not even gonna go there. That was after Elway's first. That was what, the second year of Elway's tenure with the team, and they were already a Super Bowl contender with Manning. Just solid quarterback, just really good quarterback play.
Should have gone that year.
They should have. Absolutely, they should have. And then 2 years later.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then 2 years later, John Elway's like, oh, I know what we need, because we just got destroyed by it in the Super Bowl. We need another pass rusher to take focus and attention off of Von Miller, because that worked with Elvis Doomerville. And then he brings in DeMarcus Ware, who gets cut by the Dallas Cowboys. And that today still, that's the dumbest thing the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones ever did. Cut anyone else. DeMarcus Ware is a legend. I
The
mean,
heartbeat of your D.
he's the heartbeat of your defense. He's the heartbeat of your team. And everything, not coincidentally, since that time has really fallen apart for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, Jason Witten retired today. Tony Romo retired last year. Des Bryant got cut this year. A lot of bad things happening there. Ezekiel Elliott can't seem to.
You got a team that's now just entirely built around Dak and Zeke. You know, it's just a whole new generation that you're going to have to add a lot of pieces, and they're going to have to figure out what their identity is. And that's where the Des thing may have been the right thing for them to do now, because it's got to fully shift into that thing that probably started around DeMarcus Ware.
Absolutely. Yeah. So they're fully there now. 4 years later, I mean, it seems like a long time, but that was 4 years ago that the Broncos first signed DeMarcus Ware back in 2014, and it feels like a lifetime ago. But now you've got the new era coming in, and I'll never forget this. I worked for Pro Football Focus this past season doing basically what I would do is I would identify every single player on the field on every given play, and I did a lot of college games. I did primarily college games, and so I'll never forget one game that I did, North Carolina State versus Florida State. And I had the North Carolina State defense and the Florida State offense. Those were my two sides of the ball that I had to cover. So every time Florida State had the ball, I was on. So there was this guy on the field for North Carolina State he was on the field for every single play. And on every single play, he was single-handedly destroying the 12th ranked team in the country at the time, I believe it was. And I'm just sitting there thinking, who the heck is this guy from North Carolina State? And I should have known, being a draft guy, that even as a junior or whatever he was last year or 2 years ago, Bradley Chubb, I mean, this guy is a freak. He destroyed every single play. I would contend that he won that game.
He was the main character of that story.
He was the main character of the story. Absolutely. He took over the game, and he became, at that point for me, I was like, that guy's a top 10 pick. I don't care what happens the rest of the season. What I just saw is a top 10 pick. And then, of course, the rest of the season plays out. This whole narrative about quarterbacks dominates the draft talk. And Bradley Chubb kind of flies under the radar, especially for Broncos fans who are picking in the top 5, assuming all along it's going to be quarterback. It's going to be quarterback. We spent 2 hours talking about quarterbacks and barely any time talking about Bradley Chubb.
And an endless amount of time listening to everybody else talk about quarterbacks.
Exactly.
And think about all the speculation. My dad and I were talking about this. All the endless speculation about all the different quarterback paths we can take. And dude, this is Case's team now, man. This is fully, and it was, but it's fully Case's team now. Like, we are the Case Keenum Denver Broncos. And like Chris Harris wanted, and some of the other Broncos players wanted. They wanted us to get strong elsewhere and to roll with Case. And I think you and I, we went through some phases where first we were like, the only thing we don't want, this is before the free agent quarterback signing, is them to grab Case and then grab like Baker Mayfield. And then that's the stuck situation we've been in. Well, then as soon as we signed Case, me and you switched real quick to we're like, well, we should probably get Case and Baker Mayfield. It was exactly what we said was the only Case we didn't want. So then leading up to it, it's just been like, okay, go quarterback. If it's not Baker, maybe it's Rosen. Oh my gosh, is Darnold going to fall to us and all this stuff? It's quarterback. And so you can't really rest in the Case era because we were still in this place of like, it may be somebody else. And whether it's the first year or the second year, this is just Case is a holdover to get to that point. And now it's like, that's what really hit me yesterday was like, one, not only are we just going to have just a filthy, nasty pass rush, but we're now in the Case Keenum era, man. And I was like,
and I love it. Yep. I love it. And you and I talked about, and this is another thing about the storytelling aspect. You've got to go on YouTube if you haven't already and look up some stories about Case Keenum. I mean, that doesn't necessarily make him a great football player.
Story, and there's like a few good ones that especially cover the arc of last year, and some of them have stuff from previously. And the one I would say is it's really informative as a Bronco fan, if you want to get into this story aspect of it, is there's one where this guy reads a blog post, I think, that Case wrote. And
Yep.
did he write the article in the Players Tribune? Something
Yeah.
like that. But
Yep.
and there's some guy that's reading it, and I, it doesn't fit exactly with Case. You're kind of like, who is this guy talking? But it's Case's story overlapped with video footage of what has been the build up to last year's incredible season. So it's awesome. Check those out if you want to know the narrative.
Yeah, you've got to do that. It's huge because when you connect personally to these players that the Broncos have, it's so much more satisfying to be a fan, in my opinion. If you connect personally to their story.
Yeah, I've talked to people about like recruiting them into football, getting them to watch football and be a football fan. And one of the things I've said was with pretty much any sports, like if you're just watching it, like yeah, if you're going to a game, it's going to be fun. But if you don't know the storylines, you're not going to get into it. These are just people doing things, numbered people doing things. And if you know the human souls, I had a debate with my buddy this past week actually about this, where he's like, I don't think the stories like really make it that much more important to me. I was like, so he's like, he basically made the point that if a Raider throws to a Raider and scores a touchdown, he's going to be excited about it. But if he knew the story, he wouldn't be that much more excited. I was like, so if some guy like just lost his mom and has gone on to go play in this game, and like this guy's story, you know what he's been through, like, and he goes out there and he scores a touchdown and like dedicates it to his mother, that doesn't make you feel more knowing that? Because it does for me for sure,
Yeah.
And so knowing the people, knowing the journey, that's where for me, like I've never taken fantasy players even that I don't like their personalities. Like if you're somebody that's abrasive and like negative, like Shady McCoy, I've never owned Shady once. Never once in any fantasy league have I ever owned him because I just never really liked him as a person. So I don't care what he does on the field. Like I want characters. I want to build my Avengers football squad, out of the Earth's mightiest heroes, out of all these cool personalities. So knowing the story, knowing who they are, knowing what they've been through, and then that again reconnects us right back to the draft, to where, unless you're able to follow all of these college storylines, which I know people like yourself and some others do, for a lot of NFL fans, this is the gateway to where, you don't want to even study all the players going to all 32 teams. As soon as they hit your team, then you start to tune into, okay, what's their story, where they've been, what's happened. And that just, it really enriches the whole football experience, especially in football where it's this 11-man squad that's going out and there's the chemistry that's built between them, even the rivalry matchups. When you've got like a corner that goes to a rival team and is playing against the guys that, he grew up with, but grew close to in the locker room. Like that stuff is all really, really, really cool. And it's what makes me stoked about football. So the draft ends up being this gateway to where they cross over from this realm that I don't know into this place to where like, okay, now, not that they now matter like that. I don't want to say it like that, but it's
right.
Like, now matters much more deeply to me to where like I want to tune into these stories and see what's going to happen, because I am going to be paying attention. I am going to be following along. And I know a lot of people that don't watch the draft because they don't know the players. And that's interesting to me because I feel like that's where you should start. Like, yeah, of course you don't know them. Like, neither do I, like for a lot of them, but I'm going to go in, and especially with, depending upon how good the coverage is from ESPN or NFL, you're going to get that's what it really should be. That's what the draft special shows should be. And I think they are to a degree is, here's this person, here's his story. Here's a little 30-second, 1 minute window into not just how this person performs, but like some of the cool storylines as far as the stuff that they've been through, and what sets them apart as a unique human soul, that we're going to be watching and rooting for. And I love that aspect of the draft.
Yeah, 100%. And talking about those storylines, I think that this storyline really kind of is going to be a throwback to 2015 when the Broncos had the best defense, in my opinion. And I'm going to say this because I'm a Broncos fan, dang it, and I can say it. I think that was the best defense I've ever seen.
All time.
Yeah. All-time best defense. And you know what? You can feel free to disagree with that, whoever you are, wherever you are. I know there's probably a lot of millennial fans like myself who would say, well, no, the 85 Bears, and like, you never watched them play, get out of here. But the 2013
It's
Seahawks.
a talking point. Like, I'm only going to engage that conversation if somebody's like, look, 85 Bears, this is why. Bam, bam, bam. Compared to the Broncos, bam, bam, bam. They've looked into this. They're not just regurgitating a talking point, but they know what they're talking about. And if you have a substantial argument against it, I would love to hear that.
100%.
But you're still wrong. The Broncos defense was the best.
You're still wrong. I'll hear you out, but you're wrong.
Right. Well, we can talk about it, but at the end of the day, you're wrong.
Exactly. And this brings me back to what Mike Mayock said when I was rewatching the first round last night. Mike Mayock, hey, yeah, 100%. Tap on your screen there so we can see that.
Super Bowl 50, baby.
That's what I'm talking about. Beautiful. This brings me back to what Mike Mayock was saying, and I think he made a pretty bold statement that maybe not a lot of people in Broncos country realize that he actually made. First and foremost, he said, and I'm quoting this from memory, so this isn't verbatim, but he basically said, this brings the Broncos defense back to where it was when they had DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller on opposite sides of the field from each other. And I'm like, ooh, that's big time. But then he also said, this was the thing that he said that really got me raising my eyebrows. He's like, Case Keenum is going to be able to provide the Broncos with better quarterback play than Peyton Manning did in 2015. And of course, Broncos fans remember, Peyton Manning was horrible that year. Horrible. It was in an era where we've seen some bad quarterback play for the Denver Broncos. That was among the worst. And I'm just going to flat out say it because Peyton Manning had many a great year in the NFL. That was one of his worst. And the Broncos defense carried him. So for them to have a defense that is even close to the same level as they had in 2015, even if it's close, you get better quarterback play.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of Broncos fans are like, no, they need this, and this. And I'm like, you need a quarterback. That's what you need. You need a quarterback that can play. And you need the defense to just keep doing its thing because Von Miller is going to get his. And Derek Wolfe is going to create opportunities for Von Miller. And now all of a sudden, you've got Bradley Chubb. You've got a fully healthy Shane Ray. You've got Shaquille Barrett coming back. You've got Shelby Harris broke out on the inside. You've got Clinton McDonald, who was one of the leaders on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year in sacks, which, by the way, Broncos fans who forgot that they signed Clinton McDonald this offseason, one of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL. Not to mention, the last 2 years, their second-round pick has been a defensive end, Adam Gotsis in 2016, which hopefully everything plays out in his favor. I mean, I would hate for him to have done whatever he's being accused of doing. Hopefully everything plays out in his favor. He didn't do it, and he's able to continue playing because last year he was one of their best run defenders. And then you've got DeMarcus Walker, last year's second-round pick. I have huge hopes for DeMarcus Walker as a pass rusher, especially from the inside at that 3 technique position. And then you talk about, I mean, we haven't even gotten into Pecco Jr. or whatever the heck he is, and Zach Kerr. I mean, the Denver Broncos defensive front, like you said, it's set. You get an inside linebacker.
Okay, it's like Ware and Vaughn again, but it's like if Ware was a freaking kid.
There's more, and there's more. There's more than what they had back then, which is crazy to me. Like they had back then Sylvester Williams, and I feel Pecco is a vast upgrade over Sylvester Williams, first of all. Zach Kerr, very good player. And then you add these 2 interior rushers, which they're not necessarily replacing what Malik Jackson brought to the table, but those guys, I mean, combined could give you 8 to 10 sacks. Harris, I'm speaking of Harris and McDonald specifically. And then Walker was him and Bradley Chubb were the 2 best defenders in the ACC in 2016 by far. I mean, those guys dominated everyone they played against. They couldn't be stopped. And now you have both of them on the same team in the NFL with Von Miller, with Shane Ray, who was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, Shaquille Barrett, who was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. If you're an opposing – go ahead.
We need an inside linebacker and a corner, and we are freaking set. This is where – remember we talked about this like a couple months ago where I was like, I don't buy the whole window thing.
No.
Everyone was talking about the window. We got to get Kirk. because we're in a window. The defense is faltering off, right? Especially right after we lost to Lieb. And I'm like, dude, throw another good young corner in there, whether it's this year or whether it's next year, with Harris and with Roby. And then our safety position, especially now with Cravens, is looking good. Cravens and still having Stewart and Will Parks coming up. That's 4 solid safeties, and 3 of them are super young. And then Harris and Roby are still super young. Langley, right? Brendan Langley, young. And so that's where it's like and then now we may have Chubb, Wolf, Vaughn, Walker, all these guys that are also super young. So I feel like if we can get a good ILB this year, and at least by next year get a good corner to replace Talib and get the no-fly zone back to the place it was, we're going to be another really good defense for another 5-6 years. And I love that. I love that Chubb's young. It's not a wear after Cowboys. It's a freaking wear before Cowboys. Mixed with Vaughn. It's beautiful.
100%. And speaking of that, this is where we are. We're Bradley Chubb. We're bought in 100%. Day 2 and day 3 of the draft, as of this recording, have yet to happen. We're sitting here with 2 hours till the start.
I just want to say, I love that Chubb is a goofball. Once again, one of those character things, man. Like, I like to root for guys that show some personality and show some passion. I don't like the quarterbacks that are just like, whatever, they go out there and do their thing. Like, energize people, man. Like, fire me up. Give me some passion. So when I heard that Chubb is just a huge goofball, I was like, perfect. So not only is he freaking awesome and a great football player, but you got that storytelling character component to where he's going to be a fun guy, which is going to bond him with his teammates. It's those intangibles, it's those underrated things to where, like, if you have them all moving in unison, where they're like feeling each other, man, and they're like, they're a squad that's united and they unspoken communication, that kind of stuff. That effectiveness of how they operate as one singular entity, one body on the field, that stuff is grown in the locker room. And with those kind of personalities of them all laughing and dancing and having fun with each other, that's where that builds and that energy carries over into the playing field. So I'm stoked.
I couldn't have said it better. That was extremely well said. That's exactly what I want for the Broncos, is to have that again, because that's what they had in 2015. They had that cohesiveness. And like you said, I think they're an inside linebacker away defensively, maybe another corner just for some depth, but inside linebacker away. And I'm selfishly very much hoping for, I'm an Iowa Hawkeyes fan, and Iowa's got a linebacker that's coming out this year named Josie Jewell, which, by the way, sounds like the name of a character that you would create on your franchise mode. Yeah. Josie Jewell, inside linebacker, farmer's kid, didn't even barely play a 8-man high school football or whatever the heck his story is.
Yeah.
Great story, but also a freaking phenomenal football player. And I'm holding out hope that they get him, but I'm not going to be too disappointed with. There's a number of guys they could go after that'll be like, that'll be great. That'll be fine. But day 2 and day 3 of the draft, my hope for the Broncos is you get a starting caliber inside linebacker, a starting caliber running back, and you add depth at some other positions like receiver, cornerback, tight end. I'm good.
Yeah.
I mean, go get that linebacker. That's what I want. Go get that running back that can come in and maybe push Devontae Booker for that starting job. Mm-hmm. I feel like I would be really pleased if the Broncos come away from the draft tonight and maybe they still draft a quarterback. I mean, there are options out there, players that could come in and be that new underdog because they weren't a first-round pick, or they didn't go to a big-time school, or they weren't that guy at the top of the draft. There's a lot of players that can come in and really help this Denver Broncos team still on day 2 and day 3 of the draft.
Yeah, and I don't know how much I want a quarterback now, to be honest. Like, I was saying this earlier. As far as, we were talking about, you get a rook, and then you've got Paxton and you've got Chad Kelly and Case all in a quarterback room, and you're bound to have one of those guys come out, where we're not going to have to be looking for a franchise quarterback for too long. So, like you and I aren't really giving up on Paxton quite yet. We're gonna let him see, give him some time to, show some improvement this year. So I like a quarterback room now, thinking about it, now that we haven't got one of those top guys. That was where I thought there was a precedent, as far as you're at five, you have four guys that may be franchise dudes that may go in the top, 10, 15 picks. So we may not be in this position again to where we can get that guy if we don't have the guy on our roster. And at that point, we weren't even going from a place of desperation. Like, we have three guys that maybe could start, obviously with Kelly and Paxton, we're going to need a little bit of time, but Case could be the guy. We just saw enough Case to suspect he may be the guy. So I think I really wanted us to maybe put quarterback while we were in that rare spot as a high, priority. But now that a lot of those guys have gone out, I'm not going to be opposed to if they see a guy that they like later on and grabbing him. But I feel like there's some other places that we need to reload in. And especially like you said, ILB, corner, running back, wide receiver, specifically, that I think that's going to impact us more in the short term and the long term. Whereas I think the quarterback play at this point, especially getting a guy later, it's just strictly a long-term move. And I don't know if we have as much of a long-term problem with the two guys behind the case. So I really do want to see running back. I really do want to see ILB. If we come away with one player to each of those positions, say I'm going to be very happy. Not saying I won't be if we go other paths, but I think that's definitely needs to be our focus to grab those guys. And then I want wide receiver. I think bad. I think there's a guy we need to get, and I think they want a special teams, more of a versatile guy. But I think we need to find the next good Broncos receiver, and that's also assuming that maybe Carlos Henderson shows that he is who we wanted him to be. But still, I want that great problem of having too many guys where we're having to figure that out, especially because we're not going to have Daniel forever. We're over the 30 hump now.
Yep.
So we need to figure out who the future of the Denver Broncos are going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly where I'm at as well with that. And I think, we're gonna bring an episode fully devoted to the entire Broncos draft class, which I'm so excited for, because I love looking at every single pick from the first pick all the way down to the last undrafted free agent who got the lowest signing bonus. I love dissecting every single one of those players, and I can't wait to do an episode fully devoted to that. So if you're tuning into this before the Broncos make their picks, fret not, because we're gonna record another episode talking about the entire draft shortly after its conclusion. And but I couldn't be more excited for this. I mean, we didn't really talk a whole lot about this project and why we called it the name that we did, the Juice. But I think we're going to keep getting into that as we continue to grow. And I think this was a great way for us to kind of get our feet wet with this and just to get talking, just to, like I said, I want this to be a conversation that, like, I as a fan would want to be a part of. Like, I want to be part of that conversation, because those guys, what they're talking about and how they're talking about it, it resonates with me. And so I couldn't be more excited about what's to come with this. And I don't know, Brandon, do you have any other closing remarks?
Yeah, very excited as well. But yeah, if you listen to a lot of these things, if you're an avid podcast radio person, I know that as somebody that's like that myself, you just start to hear the same conversation said over and over again. And what you start to gravitate more to is the personalities. As far as that's why I've always liked the Vic Lombardi, because he's just like, you get him, you get Vic, you get the person. And it's very much it's colored by their personality. And so I think that's where what you and I are trying to do is it's almost like a non-traditional, refreshing, different kind of podcast. I know everybody's going to say that coming out in their inaugural pod. We're going to be different. You're going to like it more than the other ones that are out. But I think that we do have kind of, like I said, this guy's an analyst. This guy knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. He's really good at what he does. Full-time football analyst. And then I'm a full-time storyteller. So you combine those things, and you're going to look at it from these two perspectives that I think complement each other as much as can sometimes bring some adversive perspectives onto the same subjects, and then infusing some pop culture, and the last podcast we talked about, I'm kind of bummed it didn't organically go to this place.
I know. Gosh.
There was something that happened where we were talking about failure, right? And we were looking at at Elway adapting actually to failure as far as not getting the right quarterbacks in the past. And we were talking about that as far as like, what is he learning from failure? What is he like? I don't care that Elway screws up. If Elway is being self-aware and realizing that I'm screwing up and I got to do better and figure these things out. What did I do wrong? What was that a problem with my staff? Was it a problem with me? What can I do to evolve? And so we were talking about failure, and it kind of segued into like, the greatest teacher failure is. And we started talking about and it was great. It was just a perfect little organic segue over to Last Jedi. And that was where we also talked about how we probably lost half of our fans. Talking Tebow and Last Jedi in the same one, two of the most polarized of Bronco and Star Wars discussions. But yeah, so
that stuff is going to happen. And I have to say too, I don't know if I mentioned it right at the top, but it's Brandon's birthday today, which means that the start of this podcast is starting at a very special time. And I feel like, that's a little bit of divine intervention just to say, you know what, we're going to start the podcast on a day that you won't forget. And it's going to be one that you look back on as a really special one because of the timing, but nothing can replace that conversation that we had on Sunday. And people are just going to have to keep tuning in because those conversations are going to happen again.
And it's good because even with this one, it didn't feel like, at least from my perspective, like we just tried to tackle the same thing and go, especially because that was a pre-draft. We were wanting to do a pre-draft episode before one. But this felt more like we just came into it again, and we have a few talking points and we covered them. But for the most part, it's just an organic conversation about the Broncos and what's going on and what comes up. And we let that kind of organic, natural flow happen. So it was a totally different podcast and good in a lot of the same ways. But really, I think it's just because we're just having a conversation and we're looking positively at what's going on. And just having a conversation with brevity as far as just nothing too serious, but at the same time, very serious. And good times.
Absolutely, man. I love it. I can't wait for more. I can't wait to have some of you who are listening maybe on as guests with us. Brandon and I are going to continue doing this. This is really exciting. This is honestly, it's a dream come true for me. And immediately when I was like, I really want to do a podcast. Immediately I was like, oh my gosh, Brandon has to be on it with me at least one time. And then you were like, oh, I'll do it. I'll do it anytime. And I was like, done. That's a deal for me because this to me is the ideal way to listen to Broncos content is two people who are friends, who relate to each other in so many different ways. And you just connect over the Broncos.
And I think you're the kind of guy that you like to talk about what you know. And that's something to where, we talked about this last podcast about the fans that just come, they put this certainty upon their opinion as oh, I know somebody in the building and they've got 83 followers on Twitter. But it's you're somebody that I go to you and I just get facts from you and you'll color some of your opinion, but you state it as your opinion. It's it's known that this is something that would be cool and could be cool, but you don't cross those things over too much. It's here's the analysis, and then here's what I think. And so for me personally, I'm somebody that doesn't like to talk about things that I don't know about. And I've got for a fan, I think I've got an above average understanding of the Broncos, but I'm not an analyst and I'm not a professional when it comes to all this. So I think that's going to work really well on the podcast as well, is if you want to talk about the storybook element of what's happening with this, I'm going to get stoked and I'm going to start talking about making those connections. But when it comes to having people on and talking numbers and talking stats, I'm going to be here having as much fun as the audience, learning information and not trying to be an analyst. It's where it's we didn't want to come into this hey, let's both be these two Broncos analysts. You're the analyst and I'm the storyteller, and there's some crossover with that. as far as you loving story and me liking the analytical angle of it, but just kind of being ourselves and letting that naturally just be a cool little duo that's where we're not the same and not trying to tackle it from the same way, but letting it kind of flow.
Exactly. And speaking of talking about what we know about, we're going to know about these new Denver Broncos in a few hours here. And so we're going to watch the draft. We're going to enjoy the heck out of it. Brandon's going to enjoy his birthday. And we can't wait. Like I said, I can't say it enough. We can't wait for what's to come with this. We're excited. This is the very first episode. This is the very, I don't know. It seems like there should be some really epic way to close this out. Brandon, I don't know, maybe since you're the storyteller, maybe you take us out and leave it. I don't know if you want to do a cliffhanger. I like those. Whatever, however you're feeling, take us out, send us out.
Well, I know last time we did our we're obviously not prophets or not very good at being prophets. Last time we segued out the episode with predictions from the future.
Oh yeah,
and I can tell you we were both wrong completely.
Yeah.
Barring some crazy events, the prophecies have failed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't think we should maybe go out on that note as we've been proven to be false prophets. But I do have a little note we can leave it off on.
Let's do it.
And that's a little GB2.
GB2.
God bless and go Broncos.
Amen. I love it.
MBT.
We'll talk to y'all. Yep. All right. We'll talk to y'all soon. God bless and go Broncos. For Brandon. Go ahead. One
more. So now, I mean, and then again, this is organic. We now have a new goal on this podcast.
Yes.
And it's that going to be an episode of this podcast. First of all, there's going to be an episode where we talk entirely a Tim Tebow episode.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
It has to happen.
You don't want to, but you really should because it's going to be great. And second of all, the new goal of the podcast is we're going to have Tebow on for one episode at some point.
Oh, I love it. Oh, my goodness.
This thing is going to go so viral. So much greatness is going to come of this.
Yes.
And your career and my career, and then combined into the podcast, Timmy T is going to call us up and be like, yo,
why have I not been on?
What's going on, man? When are you guys available right now? Because I'm ready to talk podcast. I'm ready to talk Broncos football. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it.
There's your sneak peek at the future, and that prophecy is going to come true. So
that's the future headline. Tebow joins Keckler and Bedinger for podcast. That's the future headline, and I'm excited for that because I've always wanted to talk to Tim Tebow. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, understatement of the century. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, for Brandon Keckler, I'm Sayre Bedinger. This has been episode 1 of The Juice. Thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon.